I mean, they kept an eye on each other. And you can see here, there's no growth in the budget. Now, what happens here? What happens in 2001? Look at this. The defense budget goes up, and of course, you know, that was certainly the appropriate thing to happen after we're hit with 9/11. But look at what happens to the non-defense budget. Look at this. Look at that. And that's a period when Republicans ran everything in Washington. Right? This is unforgivable, right? I mean, what happened to the Republicans? Voters said, wait a minute, I thought I voted for these people because they believed in a balanced budget, and they believed in limited government, and they're going to get rid of wasteful programs. And the budget just went up and up and up and up every year. And voters just didn't forgive them. In 2006, I wrote the very first editorial that was written anywhere in the country, one of my proudest accomplishments, on something called the Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska. How many of you have heard of the Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska? Now, this is an amazing, you know, here's what I wrote in the piece. Almost everybody knows about the bridge, but something you may not know. It costs $200 million to build that thing. Connects a small town with 30,000 people to an island. Anybody know how many people live on that island? 50 people on the island. So, and by the way, the structure, longer and larger than the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Now, here's the amazing thing. For $200 million to help 50 people, we did the calculations. You could have bought a Learjet for every person on that island, cheaper than building that bridge. And when people realized that, it became the kind of symbol of Republican excess. And so in 2006, they get thrown out of office, right? Quite, in my opinion, correctly, because they didn't stand for anything anymore. And in 2008, they take their lumps again. And in fact, I like to tell this one story about politics that I think explains everything that's gone on with the two parties in the last few years. And just bear with me. I'll tell the story. When I get to the end of the story, I think you'll understand the relationship this story has with politics. It's a story about two young boys, okay? And one boy is 6 years old, and one boy is 5 years old. And they're brothers. And one day, the 6-year-old says to the 5-year-old, when we go downstairs for breakfast this morning, let's each say a curse word to Mom. So the 5-year-old said, that's a great idea, let's do that. So the 6-year-old said, I'm going to say the word hell to Mom, and you say the word ass to Mom. So they start giggling, and they agree to do it. So they go downstairs for breakfast, and the mother says to the 6-year-old, son, what would you like for breakfast this morning? He quite cleverly said, what the hell, Mom, I think I'll have Cocoa Krispies. Well, his mother just erupts in anger. She is so angry, she reaches across this the kitchen table. She grabs that little boy by his scrawny little neck, and she's yanking him back and forth. She tosses him in the corner of the room, he collapses. She's so mad, she says, you go upstairs, and you never use that kind of language in this house again. So he moans, he goes up. Well, meanwhile, the 5-year-old has been watching this Mount St. Helens eruption on this moment. He is absolutely terrified. So now she turns to the 5-year-old and says, and you, young man, what do you want for breakfast this morning? Well, he can barely get the words out, and he's stammering. He said, well, Mom, I'm not really sure, but you can bet your sweet ass it ain't Cocoa Krispies. Isn't that the story about two parties? One party screws up, and the other party does exactly the same thing. And that's why you get this big one. Look, the other thing is here, look at this. I mean, one of the kind of mythologies that the Democrats and Obama have talked about is we've underinvested, right? We've underinvested in all these government programs. We need this stimulus bill because we're not spending enough money on government programs. Look at this. Over the last 7 years, 5 years under Bush, every program's gone 4 or 5 times the rate of inflation. I mean, it's just a mythology that we're not spending enough money on these programs. And here's where the money really goes. You know, when we do look at the very scientific. Here's where this was based on a very scientific study we did at the Heritage Foundation. You know, this is laying out around my sleeves, and most of the rest goes to promotion steps. So now, I will be serious for a minute. Let me just talk about, okay, some of the threats we face. Here's a big one. The coming tax increase. Now, I'd make the case to you. Here we are in the worst stock market we've had in at least 30 years, right? The market is tanking. Can you imagine the idea of talking about raising the capital gains and dividend tax at a time like this? I mean, it is criminally negligent to be talking about doing something like that. I mean, if you raise capital gains and dividend taxes, the value of stocks has to fall. I mean, it's just an economic truism. The capital gains tax is embedded into the price of stocks. It's already capitalized into stocks. I mean, one way of thinking about this, not to belabor the point too much, again, I wish Barack Obama were sitting here so I could explain this to him. I mean, if you've got, you know that a share of stock, and for those of you who are stockbrokers, you know this, a share of stock is just based on the earnings of the company, right? In year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and you just go out to year infinity and you take a discount and you come up with the, you discount that stream of income and you come up with a price for the share of stocks, right? Now let's just assume to make this simple, let's assume that you've got a stock and it earns $10 a share in year 1, year 2, year 3, and so on. That share of stock is going to be worth roughly $100 with a 10% discount rate. Now, let's say that we take that company and you got $10 a share, and all of a sudden now you put a 50% capital gains tax on that. Okay, you follow me? Now all of a sudden your after tax is not $10 a share, right? It's $5 a share. You got me? Because the other $5 goes to the government. Now if you go out, now the stock is not worth $100, it's worth $50. Does that make sense? Because you've taken, so anytime you raise the capital gains tax, shares of stock are worth less, and anytime you cut the capital gains tax, shares of stock are worth more. And in fact, if you look at what happened in 2003 when George Bush cut the capital gains tax, what do you think happened to share values? They went up. And I would make the case, and people ask me this all the time on these TV shows, why is the stock market falling now? He hasn't raised the capital gains tax yet. And the answer to that is very simple. It's the same reason that Wayne Gretzky was the greatest hockey player ever played. And this is some of the great advice for politicians, for investors, and so on. Wayne Gretzky was once asked what made him such a great hockey player. And he said, I think what made me such a great player was while everybody else on the ice was always skating to the puck where the puck was, I always skated to where the puck was going. And that really explained why he was so great. Well, that's what investors do, right? They skate to where the puck is going. And if you think that the capital gains tax is going up in 2010, you're going to sell your shares now. And so this has had a depressive effect on the market. And the scary thing is that they don't have to do anything. The Bush tax cuts automatically expire in 2011. Okay? They automatically go away. And the Democratic Congress doesn't have to do anything about it. And you can see here what goes on. If we do this tax share goes up and up and up every year. That's the biggest tax time bound we've ever seen. I'm going to speed up and just cut to the chase here. One last thing that's going on with the economy. It's not just the taxes that are a big problem. The other problem is what is going on with our money supply. And I don't know how many of you have been following what the Federal Reserve Board has been doing. But if you're not, you should really be paying close attention to this. If you look at a chart, and I apologize I don't have it with me, but if you look at a chart of money creation by the Fed and the Treasury Department over the last 70 years, it goes up, it goes up a little bit like this. And then if you look at what happened starting in about July of 2008, it goes right through the roof. We have created more money in the last 6 months than we did in the previous 70 years. That is a pretty amazing statistic. And what does that mean? It means that right now the Fed is just pouring money into the economy to try to get people to spend and so on. Now, we can argue whether that's the right thing or wrong thing to do. But now, that's not causing inflation right now because what's happening is people aren't spending the money. And here's the problem. Once we get this economy going, and hopefully that will be soon, if you shovel that much money into the economy, as Milton Friedman taught us, so many years ago, inflation is just too many dollars chasing too few goods. If you have that amount of money in this economy, where you've doubled the money supply, my big worry is once the economy comes out of this recession, you're going to get this inflationary effect, just like we had in the 1970s. And at the very time we're printing all this money, what's going on with the debt? If you look at what has happened in the last 6 months, we have borrowed more money in 2009. If you project through the end of the year, we will, when you take into account the stimulus plan, the bailout plans, all of these, the homeowner relief plan, all of these things, we will have borrowed more money in the last year than we did in the previous 200 years.